Good evening and welcome to episode 4 of Norrice Lead TV. Now, coming up tonight in this episode, we have an action-packed programme going on because we will be hearing from Jewish Leadership Council Chair Jonathan Goldstein in conversation with Faith Minister Lord Stephen Greenhalgh, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, who will be giving us the latest guidelines on faith communities.
And now for the exclusive interview, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome, and a particular welcome to Lord Stephen Greenhalgh, who's with us this evening. Thank you very much, Minister, for joining us this evening. It's a huge honour to have you with us. And first of all, let me, in a range of emotions, firstly congratulate you for your elevation to the House of Lords in recent times, but also commiserate with you because I know, like many people around this country in these very, very difficult times, you've unfortunately lost a parent during this time. And I know you lost your mother in early April. And so on behalf of the Jewish community, we send you long life. We wish you hope you have a future full only of happy times. And let me just say that since your appointment at the ministry, the Jewish community has been hugely appreciative of the compassion and the engagement that you've had with the community across the religious spectrum. I know that you've met with representatives from Stamford Hill. I know that you've met with the Chief Rabbi and others. I know that you've met with Rabbi Laura Jana Clausen on behalf of the Reform Movement. So we're hugely appreciative of your engagement. But let me reiterate, the most important thing is to wish on behalf of the community you long life on the recent loss of your mother.
Well, thank you very much. As you say, it's been pretty bittersweet times.
Yeah, well, I think that we all have gone through different journeys over this period, and I also know and understand that you're a practicing Roman Catholic, so you'll understand from a faith perspective how the differing faiths are having to deal with the lockdown and the effects of coronavirus. So maybe we can start by you explaining how you think the government is able in these wholly unusual and complicated times to be able to flex rules for different religions, because as we all know, each of our religions, whilst maybe praying to the same God, have different ways of going about that.
Well, Jonathan, let me just say, I know that you've also had a loss, and we discussed this before we went on air, and you know, I don't have such a great phrase that, you know, as long life, but I wish you long life as well. We've both gone through the mill, and we both know what that means to lose a parent. And I think whether you're in public life, as I am again now, you know, or like you, an important pillar of the community, what we need to do is balance safety and the ability to protect and preserve life with our understanding. And it was actually the Chief Rabbi that said that on the call. He mentioned some Harvard data that showed that actually faith matters, and that you live longer through that quality of life and that spiritual renewal that you get from faith. So I think we're always balancing those two, you know, those two desires, if you like, preserving life but enabling people to fully practice their faith.
I think that's right, and I think we've seen that across the community. One of the things that we've been very proud of in the Jewish community, and I'm sure has been true of other faiths, has been the innovation that our leaders have brought, and our rabbis and our teachers have brought to this time over the last few weeks, to ensure that people remain engaged with their faith, engaged with their communities, and engaged with each other. And it's something I think we should be proud of.
I think everyone, all faith groups, and of course the Jewish community, but all faith groups have done an amazing job moving online and virtually, because all places of worship are closed. And as we, you know, start to release and look at opening up places of worship, which is the mission of the new COVID Roadmap 19 task force, we've got to recognise just what we've achieved in a short time. So I commend, you know, the Jewish community, but all faith communities, frankly, and even belief communities. I've met some of the belief communities. My God, there's so many different entities that, you know, you need to consider. But I have to say, it's been what we probably moved more digitally in the last month or two than we would have done, you know, over a period of a decade. So in that sense, that, you know, that anything comes out of this tragedy, if you like, we've learned how we can continue that spiritual journey through you know, by virtual means. And you've created your own TV station, of course, which is commendable.
Yes, well, which we're using this evening. So when you look through the government's plans for easing the lockdown and hopefully slowly bringing us back to some level of normality, without committing to dates, because I know it's impossible to do that at this point in time, how do you see places of worship fitting into that process? And obviously the difference between private prayer and public prayer in that regard.
Well, first of all, I think we need to recognise that government needs to recognise faith communities as not lack of the queue. It would be wrong if we ended up a process where pubs were opening up, restaurants were opening up, but places of worship were closed. So, you know, by having this one of 5 task forces, I think this government, under the leadership of my boss when he was mayor and now our Prime Minister Boris Johnson, I mean, I worked with Boris for 4 years, he's putting faith at the right at the heart of the roadmap for recovery, which I think is great news. So it won't be at the back of the queue. It will be, you know, it's got the appropriate a government focus, led and chaired by the Secretary of State, and I'm be chairing the next task force on Wednesday. So that I think is important. The second thing is, you know, we've got that big discussion about public worship, and that looks like it's something that won't happen until early July at the earliest, but that's always under constant review. So we've got, you know, the alert systems and the R rate. We're all learning about these indicators, and you know, frankly. You know, we're at the mercy of those, quite frankly, about when things happen. But let's assume that it won't happen before July. And then, as you say, there are issues that have had, you know, considerable representations on, and they are from, you know, different faith groups about when individual prayer, or we would call it private prayer as Roman Catholics, and I don't know if there's what the equivalent is within the Jewish community, but everyone uses slightly different words. But, you know, that is one element that might happen before public worship, and that needs to be looked at. First, as a way of
that regard, you see, we have opened up this opportunity to people to ask me questions that I can ask on their behalf, which are quite particular. So maybe we can just pick up on prayer in that regard and ask one of the questions that we've been asked. As I'm sure you've learned by now, that for a wide spectrum of the Jewish community, 10 people are needed for prayer. And actually that can happen anywhere. That can happen in a park, that can happen in a car park. When do you feel that actually 10 people congregating together appropriately socially distanced would be able to occur within that time frame?
Well, I think we can assume that that is different from public worship, when much greater numbers would come, and that needs to be handled in the earlier rounds of opening, because I think all the faith leaders, from the chief rabbi and others, are talking about marching in step. But not every religion will go the same way. We have to create the guidelines so that it's possible for those things to happen with the input from Public Health England. But there's no reason why that couldn't be an earlier phase to public worship. And that's the reason why we're holding these weekly task forces, for that very reason.
Correct.
But I'm not committing to dates on television today.
I'm not asking I'm fully respectful of the fact that you won't commit yourself. And by the way, let me just say, because you did mention your boss, both as mayor but as in government, and let me just say that how delighted everybody in the community, and I'm sure everybody in the country, has been to see the Prime Minister's recovery to health, and we wish him success and recovery in that journey. And we also should take the opportunity to wish him Mazel Tov on the birth of his child. So it's worth making both. We should make both those points while we're doing it. Now, in terms, obviously, in schools, obviously, there's currently a big debate going on about opening of schools. And you will also know, just like in churches, that many of the synagogues have Sunday schools, weekend schools. And would you see those Sunday schools being able to open at the same time as primary schools? Or is that something which you think goes along with the prayer issues?
Well, I think when you get government guidance, it's not making any distinction between secular and religious schooling. What essentially it's doing is providing guidance that will apply to everybody. So I think it's, you know, I think it's very important that that there's that desire to open safely, that they work closely with Public Health England that issue the guidance to ensure that that happens when it's appropriate, when it's safe to do so. That's the advice that I'd give.
That's great. And in terms of ways, one of the questions that we've asked, and obviously...
By the way, Jonathan, I hasten to add that my son, I've got 3 kids. My 11-year-old is due to go back to school. He doesn't look particularly enthusiastic, to be honest with you.
Well, I should add on that that my 18-year-old, I think, is currently euphoric that he's not having to sit A-levels. So I think with every...
my oldest, he's missing his O-level as well, or GA, whatever they call it now. Yeah.
With every cloud, there's a silver lining, you see. So... And in terms of looking for ways for over 70s to socialise within faith communities, that's something which, in terms of this family gathering issues and otherwise, a lot of people are focused on. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think we have to think about age, because obviously there's the social interaction that it's important, but also let's take the Church of England that have 15,000 church buildings. The workforce that clean those buildings is largely over 70, and that's a social activity for them. They'll meet their friends and they'll also clean the church. So I think, we're going to have to think about the fact that, we need to think about that age group. And what we can do to ensure that they get what they want from their faith, and also the social interaction, but it also happens safely. I mean, I think that's, again, another thing we need the appropriate guidelines for.
I agree. Now, one of the areas that I know the Chief Rabbi discussed with you, and I know also that the Stamford Hill community has raised with you, is the whole issue of weddings.
Yep.
And also in the Jewish religion, the whole issue of consecration of graves and the conduction of funerals. But dealing with weddings first, the way that the Jewish world works, there's a hiatus in the Jewish year for 7 weeks, where for most of the time weddings don't happen. And normally, certainly in the very religious world, there's a glut of weddings post a festival.
I understand that. And it's coming in June, isn't it?
Correct.
I mean, you've had so April and May wasn't a problem, but June then becomes the issue. I've had that representation several times, I hasten to add.
For Pentecost, Shavuot, as we call it, not this week, but next week. And after that, there's then a real focus on hopefully getting people married. Your thoughts again, please, sir? So my question was, before the editing, before the wireless, I think, the strains on the system in the country are enormous.
Yeah. The bandwidth issue of everyone using Zoom at the same time. Yeah.
The question was, how do you feel about weddings, and bearing in mind the particular...
I'll let you know. I think it's appropriate that we look at the twin issues of what I would call wedding services rather than wedding celebrations that could be hundreds of people. But we look at wedding services in the context of individual prayer, as you described, but also funerals, which of course are permissible under Public Health England guidance. So I think we need to think about that in the round alongside individual prayer. And, the community, the Orthodox community, has made very strong representations about timings. And I think what we do need to recognise that government needs to march in step for all faiths. So I think everyone has to make their representation, and then we need to see how quickly we can do that, and how quickly it is to enable local communities to decide when it's safe to open places of worship for that.
Understood, sir. So my final question would be, you've mentioned a few times the task force that you've created across the religions. Perhaps you could just explain to the community who's on that committee, how that task force, how you intend that task force to work going forward, and how representations can be made to the task force.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, my private office won't like to hear this, but please make representations directly to myself and or the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, because between the two of us are chairing all those meetings. We have obviously a strong secretariat, but all the major faith groups are represented on the task force. Obviously the Chief Rabbi for the Jewish community. We also have the Archbishop of Canterbury and Cardinal Vincent Nichols for Roman Catholics, and then we also have representatives from the Hindu community and the Sikh community as well, and the Muslim community. So, all major faith groups are represented. The task force runs weekly. We have the first task force on Friday. The next one that I'll be chairing is this coming Wednesday, because the tempo needs to be necessarily very quick. And we're very keen to have representations, but it doesn't all have to happen at the task force because they're casts of thousands. I'm very happy to hold individual or small meetings in the run-up to particular meetings to go through issues, and also to hear written representations, or read rather than read written representations as well.
That's very kind.
Oh, that was slightly not moron to speak written representations, whatever. You understand?
Understood you, sir. So let me close by thanking you for your time in hugely busy times. I don't think there's anything else particularly that you think you'd like to cover, but if not, I will thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to the community. Thank you for your commitment to ensuring that, as we are being alert and as we are being sensible, that we are able to come back to some level of normal religious life as soon as possible.
Well, if I could just say, as a new faith minister, my wife says I'm the F&F minister, that's fire and faith. But I really want to thank the Orthodox community and what you contribute and have contributed during COVID, but also and will contribute for our recovery. It's very important we do recover for our children and our grandchildren. And I'm looking forward for continued engagement and enjoyed my time with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Greenhalgh, for that and for recognising the important role that shul plays in our communal life. And thank you, Jonathan, for all you do for the community. And I wish you both much comfort and strength. And yes, a long life. I do apologise for the extra empty dialogue box that you will have noticed at the bottom of the screen. That's because the press secretary at number 10 Downing Street has to listen in for these sort of things. You were a proper TV show. Oh, yeah.
No doubt. How was your week, Rabbi Gutentag?
Oh, it's been marvellous. I met a lot of people. It's nice. I'm enjoying it.
You're getting out a little bit more. Yeah,
it's getting out, nice. More. Getting out more.
Keeping that social distancing. So, you know, this past week we had a session by Hilary Halter on advertising through the years with images. And it was actually quite fascinating to see the different ways that we advertised back in the day. But one really stood out for me, and that was the one that we used during the wartime, how your talk can kill your comrades. Look at it here. And what struck me was that this is what the Torah says. I mean, we just read this a few weeks ago in Leviticus and Vayikra 19. It says, do not be a gossip monger. And then what's the next verse after that? You should not stand over the blood of your friend. What is speaking badly about your friend and then having blood over, and then standing by his blood? What does one have to do with the other? And you actually just spoke about that, Rabbi Gutentag, in your Dvar Torah last week.
Yeah, that was my weekly message. I do a 1-minute drosha each week on a Thursday or a Friday. Check out on the Facebook page for your weekly inspiration, obviously. And my message last week was the story with Taub, who was a servant of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and he was sent to the market to buy the best meat you could possibly find. And after much research, he came back with a tongue. And the rabbi was very happy, love a bit of tongue. And the next week, the rabbi sent him to get the cheapest, poorest quality meat. And again, he came back with a tongue. And the rabbi said, make up your mind, is tongue the best or it's the worst? And then it clicked. Our tongue can actually be the best thing we've got at our disposal, and it can also be the worst thing. We all know that words can break people or make people, and it's up to us to choose those right words. And many of us will have experienced how just one unthoughtful, unhelpful word from a friend, neighbor, even family members can really change your attitude, make you feel really upset or make you feel really good. And we have that power within us to build people or break people. It's so, so powerful. I'm going to tell you another quick story about a very wealthy individual who was looking to marry off his daughter, and he was speaking to many shadchanim, all the matchmakers, and he just wanted the perfect boy for his precious daughter. And the suggestions were flying in, but each one was never like, there was always something you felt, oh, I'm going to have to compromise, whether it's on, their status in the community, their wealth, the looks, the yichus, so many different things. So he went to his Rav and he says, look, I'm looking for the perfect match. And, I feel I'm going to have to compromise somewhere here. Rabbi, just guide me. What's the least important thing that I should compromise on so I can get almost the perfect match for the daughter? And the Rav said to him, there's one thing you should compromise on. And he said it in Hebrew, Ma yomru habrios. What will people say? You need to compromise on this idea of worrying what people will say. Because you're just worried about, if I go into a shidduch with such and such a family, how will that look for me? What will people say about me? And sometimes we worry so much about what will people say, what will people feel. And the Rav is saying, don't worry about that. Do what is right for you, for yourself, for your family, for the well-being of your nearest and dearest. And if you just focus on that and not worry about what other people are going to say, you will find that so much more liberating. You'll just be able to get on with your life and do what has to be done. And so much of what we do in our lives is affected by what other people will think, what other people will say. And that's something I've really learned actually from this lockdown, that, you know, we're back to basics. You know, we're doing what has to be done, and we haven't got that pressure of, oh, what am I doing? What am I wearing? What am I saying? You know, just do what we have to do, and you can achieve so much more. We can really maximize our potential so much better.
It's such a vital lesson, how words are so powerful, and not only can it affect you physically, it can destroy people, but it can also mentally. And I think, you know, how apropos that is for people to really, you know, first of all, watch what they say and listen to what they hear, because that can make a huge impact on their lives. And so on that note, we have, as we mentioned earlier, we have the Mental Health Awareness Week. And so we're very honored and blessed to have amazing people in our own community who are working in this field. First of all, with Nefesh, you know, I don't know if many people know what Nefesh does. I mean, we are very blessed as clergy, you know, as a rabbinical team, to have Nefesh behind us. You know, don't you find, Rabbi Guttentag, that they support and inform us about the situations, about people to let us know how things are going and where we need to be and who's in hospital and who's not. How do you?
Absolutely invaluable. I was speaking to a rabbi colleague of mine, and one of his congregants complained, you know, I was in hospital, rabbi, for 2 weeks and nobody called me. And the rabbi felt really bad. He said, look, I didn't know. Of course, had I known, I would have come and seen you. I would have called you. We're very blessed here that Nefesh will always let us know. And between us, amongst the rabbinic team, we work as a team, and we'll make sure that every member is looked out for. And if I don't know how Nefesh get their information, but they do, and they are so discreet. You can trust them. So if you know of someone who you feel could do with a little extra support from the shul, speak to a member of the team, and they will do the rest privately and discreetly.
Confidence is absolutely key here. And so we are honored to hear from our very own Naomi Taub, one of the heads of Nefesh, in discussion with Rabbi Friedman.
Welcome, Naomi Taub, to Norrice TV. It's such an honor to have you here, such a stalwart of the Hampstead Garden suburb community, a past chair, vice chair, as it were, and married to Mr. Norrice Lee, no less. And so it's, you know, you are such an integral part of our community. And today you're going to tell us, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Week, an important part of what we do here at the shul that we do quietly, but it's important that people do know about Nefesh. Tell us about Nefesh, Naomi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Thank you for inviting me to be starring on your television show. I've never done anything like this before, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about Nefesh Network. I started it I think 18 years ago, together with Shar and Jeffrey Levy, because I felt that perhaps the shul were not doing as much as we could and should be doing about the care of the entire community. Yes, there was the shul for davening and everything like that. People had their smachot and unfortunately sadder events. But I felt it was important to have a connection with the community. We called it Nefesh Network for a very particular reason. Nefesh obviously means the soul, the heart, the beating heart of the community. But we added the word network because we wanted every single member to know and to feel that they were part of an integrated network. At any one time, any of us can be very appreciative of help that's offered. We may be at the same time or at another time in a position to give help. And everybody can interact as one whole community. And of course, the mental health of the community is a vital part of who we are. One of the most important lessons that we at Nefesh have been taught through our training is that we are here to listen. Thank God, virtually all of us have the ability to hear.
Right.
But how many people actually know how to listen? And that's basically what Nefesh does. Yes, we arrange lifts to hospitals or shopping or that sort of thing, but we are here to listen to anybody at any time. And that's the beating heart of it.
Wow, well, you Yasher Koach, you all do such an amazing job between the three of you who are running various aspects to the many, many, many volunteers on so many levels. I have to tell you, for Rabbi Nick and myself, it's been such a resource personally. Sometimes, Rabbi and Rebbes come to a community and have to figure it all out, and you've guided us every step of the way and pointed us in the right direction when you know that there are people who have needed a little extra TLC or help, and it's the work that you do. I also know is an example that's held up by before many communities, and they say, look at what HGSS are doing in terms of welfare and well-being of their membership. So Yasher Koach to you, it's fabulous. So let me ask you, sometimes it feels that you have a family, you have somebody who is might be aged or dealing with health issues, and they have family or caregivers who can help them. Does Nefesh have a role in that?
I think we very much do have a role, and the role is actually from two ends of the spectrum. You mentioned that somebody who may have a carer themselves, may have a family. What do we at Nefesh do? At Nefesh, we are here to listen to the person, to hear what they have to say. Sometimes when somebody's in distress, they can say things to us that they can't say to their family. They know when they talk to us, it's 100% confidential. People can and do confide all sorts of things in us, and it never goes any further. But we also have to give a thought to their children, the other members of their family, who very often have their own problems, their own lives. It's not that they don't care and love their parents deeply. Of course they do. But if we can alleviate a little bit of the stress, the day-to-day grinding stress that they are going through, then it helps them, it helps their children, it helps the older person as well. And that again is the idea of the networking of every single person in our community being valued for who they are, what they are, and where they are within the community.
Wow.
If I can also just say one thing, there is a perception, sadly, amongst the community that we deal only with the over 70s or 75s. That is not the case. We give a lot of support to people of every age, and particularly during this awful time when sadly we've had so many bereavements. We do like to think that we are here. If you've had a bereavement, yes, it maybe seems to be jumbled up in the unfortunately huge number of bereavements that we've had, but every bereavement is personal. It's your bereavement, it's your loved one. You need to have a space where you can talk about your loved one and how much they meant to you and what their loss means and what living in these strange times without a levaya, without a shiva, without somebody to give you a cuddle. Does that make it harder? Maybe it makes it a little bit easier because you've got time and space to think. We are here to listen to you, somewhere that's a safe place. We will be with you through your journey, and it doesn't matter what age you are.
Right, well, that really is something so special. We're very blessed to have Nefesh Network as such an integral part of the HGSS community. But I know that the volunteers are constantly coming and going when the shul was open, but now that the shul's closed, what is Nefesh doing?
We're trying to do exactly as we did before, but of course we haven't got our dedicated Nefesh office, and that has created certain differences in the way that we are able to work. On the one hand, through all this goodwill that has come through this awful situation, the number of volunteers who are running around doing shopping and picking up prescriptions, etc., has increased hugely. But it also means that we've had to start working slightly differently, in that our especially highly trained core volunteers are now speaking to people on a very much more ongoing individual basis, which is different from the way that we used to work. In many cases, it's actually working better. We may have to change our mind when this is all over, and we may have to do things a little bit differently. And believe me, we look forward to the day when we can start getting back to what we used to do. And if we have to change it, well, let's hope that'll be a bit of good that comes out of this crisis.
Well, it will only be going from amazing to just great, fabulous, and excellent, because Nefesh Network is such an important part of our community, something that is one of the key elements of who we are at Norrice, and thank you for your years and years of dedication and making it so integral, important, and effective. Yasher koach, and may we share simchas.
Amen. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. I know you don't like to be thanked, because that's not why you do it. You do it from the goodness of your heart. But just to let you know that it's much appreciated by the whole community for what you do, and thank you for speaking about that.
Yes, absolutely. We didn't even know what Nefesh Network, where you got that name from. So thank you for even just informing us about how Nefesh means soul beating of the community, and network is about having an integrated system. And that's why we as a rabbinic team here feel, recognize the invaluable existence of Nefesh Network. So thank you again for all your and your team's work on this.
Thank you to all our volunteers within our community. Kol hakavod to you.
Absolutely. And now up next, we have Rene Anisfeld, who works with the Jewish Helpline, one of the volunteers, and is going to share the work that they do and how, again, bring awareness around their work.
Shalom, Rene Anisfeld. How wonderful it is to have you here on Norrice TV.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rabbi Friedman.
Thank you. Well, Rene has joined us for our Mental Health Awareness Week. Rene is one of the volunteers for the Jewish Helpline. Rene, tell us a little about the Jewish Helpline.
Okay, so the Jewish Helpline was started about 35 years ago in Hendon, when a terrible tragedy occurred. A young man took his life, and the rabbi of his community suggested that if there was a service like that we have now, maybe this could have been prevented. So the idea is that anyone can call, and it's you can be completely anonymous, so you can phone up and you can say your names, whatever it is. You don't have to reveal your identity at all. And it's completely confidential. Everyone's received the same training, which is a very excellent standard of training. We have a very particular protocol where we don't give advice, we listen. And when I say we listen, it's not, hello, how are you? Which everybody says, and then they're busy looking at their watch or their phone or going on to the next thing. It's really, hello, tell me about you, tell me about you. And then the range of issues that we get can be from, someone who is completely secular, who is lonely, and really is lonely and has no family. And by the way, a lot of the people that call, we are the only people they talk to in a day. So we're the only human voice that they hear. And to sort of people from the Haredi community who have got issues that they feel they can't speak to their family or their rabbis about. And we're completely non-judgmental and no problem. And it's a really, really beautiful service. And I'm just sorry that it's not used more, because I'm sure there are people out there who could do with, you know, a really warm air. And, you know, whilst we help the callers to find their own way of dealing with their issue. So making their situation, whatever it is, a bit more okay. Sometimes we can really help them to solve their issue, and sometimes actually get down in their black hole with them and hold their hand and are just there with them, listening and being, you know, empathetic and warm and you know, it's okay if they cry, if it's okay if they shout, it's okay if they, you know, however they react. And I think, you know, there are some callers that have been calling for 15 years, so it's obviously really helping them.
Wow. Tell me a little about the volunteers and the training. I mean, it sounds really such special work that you guys are doing.
It really is a special one. I mean, also I'd like to say that, you know, when people go to their GP, they'd like to speak to their GP about their issue more, rather than just the specific thing. It might be coming from an emotional place, and GPs just don't have the time to deal with these issues. So, you know, we're here for that, and it's open from midday to midnight every day except for during Shabbat. And everybody is trained for about 3 months, and the training is the same for everyone. It's a very high standard. We're essentially learning to do three things. Listen actively, but really listen like I'm listening to you. To help to pull away the onion layers, to really unravel what's going on. Like, for example, someone might phone and say, it's not fair, my daughter's not talking to me, and she's not talking to me, and she's such a terrible person. And then you peel off a few onion layers and you realise that the week before they had a row, and the mother phoned her and screamed at her and told her that she was writing her out of her will, and she never wanted to see her again. And then the third thing we do after we've found out what the issue is to facilitate them, to help them to find their own way of dealing with their issue. Because if you've got an issue, how you're going to deal with it will be different to the way that I'm going to deal with it. So it's not about how I would deal with it, because for me it might be very black and white and obvious. But for you, there may be other issues and stuff that's happened to you in the past that colours it all. So we try to help them to find their way to, and by the way, some of the problems are so awful that there's not a solution. But there might just be some things that make them feel okay. And, you know, actually, even if you just make the person feel okay for that afternoon or that day or for the next 24 hours.
Absolutely. And are there professional services that you refer them to?
So we don't signpost. That's one thing. We kind of feel that we're trying to empower our callers. Right. So unless somebody phoned like someone who was, you know, a woman who was being beaten by her husband, I would absolutely give her, you know, the number of the Jewish Women's Aid. That would not be a, but you know, we would ask the person they found us, they've managed to find the Jewish Helpline. So we use the language to try and help them, to empower them to come up with the idea.
Right.
So we don't sign.
Thank you so much, Rene, for everything that you do for our community, for the community of, sounds like Jewish Helpline has developed quite a community of people who you serve over the years. And no doubt that community is growing and could be growing much further. I'm going to let our viewers see the number for the Jewish Helpline in just a few moments. But meanwhile, thank you so much. And may we share only good news, and but thank you for being there for our community.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Rene, for informing us about the work that the Jewish Helpline does. It's important to listen. I think that's what we keep hearing. You know, Naomi mentioned it as well as Rene. The listening factor is such an important part of being at the other end. Now we have our Chachmat Lev, one of our special Chachmat Lev honorees, Julia Alberga, who has been chosen along with Zoe Sinclair and Aviva Kaufman and Hailey Feller this year for our annual Shavua Tea. They'll be honored. And today we are hearing from Julia Alberga with her work in the Community Wellbeing Project at JLC.
Welcome, Julia Alberga, to our Norrice TV. It's such an honor to have you today. Julia is a consultant project manager for the Jewish Leadership Council for their Wellbeing Project. Julia is a longtime member of Hampstead Gardens Suburb Synagogue. It's an honor to have you here today for Mental Health Awareness Week. Julia, could you tell us a little about Mental Health Awareness Week and what we as individuals can do to make a difference?
So every year the campaign takes on a slightly different theme, and I'm not sure whether this year's theme was decided before or after COVID-19, but it's kindness. And I really couldn't think of a more appropriate messaging at this time, because we all know that being kind to others can have a huge impact on our own mental health and well-being. And within our community, as you'll hear, we've seen unbelievable acts of chesed through the Nefesh network, supporting the vulnerable or those shielding with meals, with shopping, and a friendly phone call, but also within the wider community with cooking for the NHS, the whole Captain Tom Moore raising such an enormous amount of money through pop stars singing from their homes, and our personal favourite, the Thursday night clap for the carers. But it's also important to acknowledge that we also get the feel-good factor when people are kind to us, and it makes us feel loved and appreciated and gives us a sort of sense of a community, that we're part of a community that really care. And finally, people are kind to us, and it makes us feel loved and appreciated and gives us a sort of sense of a community, that we're part of a community that really care. And finally, it's also important to remember to be kind to ourselves, and that being good enough is okay. And not every day needs to be a huge success, but I've learned that if you can go to bed and think of 3 small acts of kindness that you've done each day, it's going to really help you to feel some kind of sense of fulfillment.
Well, that's amazing. So the kindness is not just the kindness that we are showing others, but when we show kindness, it helps our own mental health and well-being.
Exactly.
Wow, so that's, wow. Tell our viewers, why is it that we're hearing more about mental health over the last few years?
We're all affected by families and friends who are sadly struggling with mental health issues. And people, I find, are always looking for something or someone to blame it on. And I think social media is often very much the scapegoat today. But we now understand that social media plays a small part in the escalation of this mental health crisis. Right. For whatever reason, today there seems to be such an emphasis on perfection. And obviously we all want the best for our children. We don't want them to struggle academically, socially, or professionally. And we want them to eat well, to be a healthy weight, to be physically fit, to be attractive. But today, all these achievements or their lack of achievements are played out in this public display for all to instantly see through social media. And today's buzzword, resilience, which everybody's always talking about, is so important, because we need to be able to accept that it's okay to fail or sometimes feel excluded, because that's how we learn to pick ourselves up and move forward. This word, resilience, which everybody's always talking about, is so important, because we need to be able to accept that it's okay to fail or sometimes feel excluded, because that's how we learn to pick ourselves up and move forward. And it's interesting because I work with child psychiatrist Dr. Mark Borelowitz, who has taught me so much and has explained that your natural resilience is 50% your DNA, what your parents were like, but only 10% is your environment or life experiences. But 40% is in your power how to react to those life experiences. So if we can work on our 40% to stay strong and mindful and be sad when we need to be sad, but find meaning and purpose in life, we may improve our well-being in the future.
Well, that's really so powerful. And, you know, I know that the work that you've been doing here in the community, and having worked with Zoe and brought Dr. Borelowitz into our community, with the Thai doctor earlier this year. It's very powerful and so helpful to all of us in terms of getting through each day and each week, and knowing that these are normal ways that we need to deal with it, and it's responses that are the most important. I know you're very involved at the moment with the JLC Schools Wellbeing Initiative. Can you tell us a little about that and what the Jewish Leadership Council is doing for our schools?
Sure. So the JLC-led Community Wellbeing Project was formed as a real collaboration between all the leading Jewish organizations in this area, such as Norwood, Jamie, Camp Simcha, Reshet, Maccabi, Pages, I'm sure I've forgotten some of the others, but to address how we best support adolescent mental health. And we spent almost a year researching, bringing in national expert advice and raising funds. And all our academic and expert research recommended the same thing, that we need to focus on developing a new culture of well-being in schools for pupils, for their families, and most importantly for school staff. And it was agreed that just over a year ago that we would employ 5 wellbeing practitioners in 9 Jewish primary secondary schools across the country, whose role it is to embed universal wellbeing programs for all age groups. Wow. And all the programs that they run are evidence-based and are monitored and evaluated by the Anna Freud Center. And it's really interesting because since the pandemic, there has been a real appetite for recognizing the importance of our work. And we're now working very closely with Pages, the Partnership for Jewish Schools, to share on our online work with all schools, and particularly our plans for how to support the mental health and well-being of children and staff as they potentially go back to school next month.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I know how hard it is for, you mentioned the staff and the teachers to be able to teach online classes, Zoom classes. We can't imagine what they're dealing with at the moment. Is there any way that we as parents can help alleviate some of the stress that the teachers are going through and the schools are going through at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to acknowledge that these are the most challenging times our generation as a whole has ever seen. And as individuals, we need to find what works for us and what works for our family. So what may help my well-being may be completely different from what helps yours. And we all need to look at ourselves and assess what makes us feel good, and really ensure that we take time for ourselves and respect others, such as we respect the NHS staff, we need to make sure we're doing the same for our teachers. And the way that we and our teachers behave during this time is going to really impact our children. And role modeling positive thinking, finding time to have a laugh are really important for our children to see. We have no idea how long this is going to go on for, but it's helpful to think about and look forward to the future, to look forward to holidays, spending time with grandparents and friends. But it's also okay to recognize that this is a difficult and challenging time, and some of us may find we need additional support and help to get us through. And if I can finally plug the Pages website, you would find on there now lots of resources for Mental Health Awareness Week, together with very clear signposting for Jewish and national support services.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Is the Pages program, you mentioned it started before COVID, obviously. It's changed during COVID. I mean, where do you see it going from here following, hopefully we all get back into school very soon? Will there be long-term effects on the children and on the parents and on the teachers that we'll have to be dealing with? And is this a long-term project, or is this a project that is just here for a limited period of time?
We all know that the best thing for children now is to get back to normality as quickly and as smoothly as possible. We're taking all the necessary precautions in place. But the best thing for everybody is to get back. The Heads Up Back to School program that will be instigated by Pages in primary schools, presumably on the 1st of June, is planned to be a 10-day program that will be, depending on when you start, you may start on June the 1st, you may start on June the 15th. But whenever you start, you will be part of a 10-day process to settle you back into school, to settle you back to the community. And that's a really important process for us.
Wow. Can you tell us anything about the 10-day program, or we just have to wait and see how it works?
It's all done in a very, through games, through play. It's aimed at young children to be able to, it's very subtle, but some of them have been used to it because they've been doing Heads Up resilience programs from year 3 for the last few years in a number of primary schools.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Julia. That was very interesting. And Mazel Tov to you on your honour of the Chochmat Lev. Well done. You're a role model to many people in our community. Thank you. So trying to work from home with little kids around.
It's not easy. I mean, just like Julia mentioned, you know, each person has to do what works for them, you know, regarding the mental health, regarding our managing in this new world. And it's amazing to see a young family right here on Norrice TV.
Let's meet Family Durkin. Well, welcome to Family Durkin.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. How lovely to see you. Now, tell me, how are you coping, Sharonne and Simon? You look like you've got your hands full. How are you managing?
Who are you first? Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah. This is Elijah. He is 4 years old. Elijah, say hello.
Hello.
He's very affectionate. Say hi. Ori is behind me.
Hi.
Ori is in year 3. And Zach is in year 5. And this is Simon next to me.
And
I'm Sharonne.
And I go to the Kerem school.
Yes, Elijah goes to Kerem school.
I've seen you there, Elijah.
No, I'm not in nursery. I'm in Kerem school.
Yeah.
Which year? Oh, okay. You said nursery. Very exciting time.
He's in
Kerem school.
Kerem school. Okay,
Yeah.
let's just leave it at that.
Kerem school.
As are the other boys.
It's a good school. It's a good school.
It's a wonderful.
So how do you find it's working now with the online classrooms?
Boys, how's your online learning go?
Okay, I mean, it's sometimes hard to get onto the actual call, sometimes technical difficulties, but in the end, you start to get on. In the end.
Nice. There you go. Now, be honest. When you're listening to your teacher, are you doing other things on the computer at the same time?
No.
Oh,
yeah.
Good answer.
He's not usually brushing his teeth and tidying his room during tefillah. No. If anyone asks, he definitely doesn't do that.
I know it's tempting. It's tempting, but he's a good boy. Yeah. But what about you, Sharonne? Are you managing to work from home?
I am trying to juggle everything, not always succeeding. The 4-year-old has been known to go outside into the garden and cut grass and his own hair at times.
Yeah, he ended up cutting his fringe off.
Yes.
You, Elijah, you cut your fringe off, and we're working hard on growing it back. Day by day, little by little, we're getting your original beautiful fringe back. Yes.
It looks great. It actually looks a natural shape. We want to really thank you because I think you're one of our first families that we take young children. So we see you know the real challenges that lie that lie within.
It's fine. It's just with the 4-year-old around, you have to adapt, and you know you're not going to get your 9 to 4 like at school, obviously, and we're just trying to do different things. Today, I'm taking 2 of them to Richmond on our first field trip, and we are going to find tadpoles and bring them back. And I thought that would be an extremely educational opportunity for all of them.
Elijah is going to be eating them and they can't. The way
Elijah will be eating them.
Yeah.
So that's today's activity. So,
That's exciting. Something different.
And Simon, are you managing to work from home or are you going out?
I'm working from home. I've set up my office in our bedroom. So I have my screens there, my desk there, and it's been a very busy time for me at work. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever had to work so hard actually. So I'm not really much use helping Sharonne with the kids during the day.
Do you realise you've just said that live to the nation?
Yeah, well, it's out there now. She knows, and I think most people do already. But yes, so it's been a very busy time.
Okay, good. And does it working from home? And what, do the kids come in while you're busy?
There's been a few incidences where I've been on giving lectures over Zoom to hundreds of people, and one or more of the children have run in naked with face paints on when they probably should be doing tefillah or something. So there's been a couple of slightly awkward moments, but the interesting thing is, I'm not alone. When there's millions of people out there who are remotely working, of course, and so there seems to be a greater acceptance.
I think people understand
that people are trying to juggle home and work. Yeah. So
I mean, it wasn't that embarrassing. I was officiating at an online shiva, and I was sharing the screen which had the prayers on it, and I didn't realise that I've got WhatsApp desktop, and someone sends a message. It was a message from the kids have blocked the children's toilet. Please, can you sort it out? And that came up with about 200 people at the service, and afterwards someone goes, "Very nice service, Rabbi. Now just go and sort your toilet out." We've all had those sort of moments, but I think people are understanding at this time.
It's showing the true normal now, you know, that first of all, that the women are really stepping up to the plate, you know, to really managing the home, and also working, so it's not easy. But
and men are even cooking as well, I believe.
Elijah wanted to show you here what he's going to use to catch the tadpoles. He's brought it especially.
Oh, very good.
Sounds very exciting. If you had your family bumper sticker on your car, what would it say? What would your motto be?
Your motto.
Well, there's been a bit of debate within the family about this for the last few days. We thought, so I was sort of on the sort of the Gamzela Tova kind of thing, you know, everything's for a purpose, and this is all you know, just trying to make the most of all the different situations in life we're thrown into. But I think probably a more fitting one is keep fit and carry on, because that's what we've done every day. We've been cycling, walking, running, and really just trying to get on with life as best we can, making the most. So I suppose both slogans could work, but for those non-Yiddish speakers amongst us, keep fit and carry on is probably resonates better.
That's very good, thank you.
No, they won't bite. And the tadpoles will not bite. That's what Elijah would like to ask us. And the answer is no, they will not bite you. There you are.
Well, that's a great motto, because it's important, especially for the kids. Get them out, and it's exactly what you're doing today. So, and I think I heard, you know, we just heard the Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and it was really about making what's normal for you, what works for you, how do you manage it all, is about how your kids, how your family can manage through it. So if you find that you need to get your kids out instead of doing that Google Classroom, then you go, girl.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoy.
We've been very lucky. The weather's been mostly amazing.
Yeah, we have.
We've got a nice garden. We've got Hampstead Heath on our doorstep, so we've got the great outdoors around us to help distract us and keep the kids occupied. Trampolines, hide and seek, you know, just we've got chickens as well, so we will take turns to go and make sure they've got enough water, enough food, collect the eggs, that kind of thing. In fact, there was, you may recall at the beginning of the lockdown, there was a national shortage of eggs. So that came in. We think we're pretty well placed for Armageddon, because we've got chickens and a trampoline, but we were able to supply, we must have given away about 70 eggs or so just to people in our street.
We left them out for the neighbours.
Oh, now you tell me. Before Pesach, and we're desperate for eggs. Now
I know. We have
actual
in our own home.
You have chickens in your home? You have chickens in your home?
They live in the house. They live in the garden.
They live in the garden.
Yeah, they
right
get a bit
at the end.
stinky.
Is that legal?
I think so. I haven't asked.
It's very much part of the ethos of Hampstead Garden Suburb. You know? Yeah.
Okay, that's I didn't.
That
They do love it.
representatives
It's like an actual pet.
representatives of the Metropolitan Police may be watching it.
Yes.
And
So-
you're the Chief of Environmental Health may be
Yes.
watching.
I've got an entirely clear conscience. It's
Yeah, you're
it's
good
fine.
to go.
Is that like the new pet? It's a new thing to have a chicken as a pet? Is that what it is?
I wouldn't say they're pets. Would you? I mean,
They're
given-
useful pets because they have a purpose.
They're not. You don't get a lot. I mean, I suppose you get more back from them than some pets because they're productive, but they're not the most intelligent creatures. I'll be perfectly honest. So you can't really
Like
take
the
them for a
chickens now,
walk
yeah?
or play
We
with
had
pets.
chickens before we had kids, so not
Probably-
necessarily the same chickens.
Probably should have left it that way, but
Amazing. I mean, this is like, okay, that's so interesting. Usually people get dogs before, and they find those very useful as well, as we all know.
Yeah.
From GFS.
absolutely.
That's, very interesting fun fact for the Durkins.
Yeah. we like to
Okay,
do
thank you for sharing that.
You like
Well,
it?
thank you. We'll let
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day out there, and hope you bring back some tadpoles, Elijah.
Thank you.
We're going to be able to, hopefully, maybe we'll post them on our page. Okay, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a lovely
guys.
day.
Good luck, and I
Okay.
hope you keep up the balance, work and home, and I think many people can feel exactly what you're going through, ourselves included, getting that private time, trying to work with the kids, but you're doing very well, and thank you so much for coming on and showing everyone else what we're doing, so thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very
Have
much.
a lovely evening.
Thank you, family Durkins, for coming on to Norrice TV. Very brave, very real, and we appreciate all the work that you do for your family and for the community. We know that Simon is one of the leaders for the children's services every Shabbat, and he's coming on to the virtual Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat that we have on Fridays.
And thank you for doing the interview with Elijah on your lap. I think many of us here, myself included, can fully relate to that. Trying to work, trying to be professional when we have to, but with the children around. But most clients will be forgiving. It's just so nice to see, Simon and Sharonne. I know you do a lot for Bet Halachem. You didn't even mention that. But we really are a community of leaders. I think hence the name Norrice Leader, our publication. I mean, just in this episode itself, we've heard, and in just this episode alone, we've heard from Jonathan, Rene, Julia, Naomi. It's something quite unique, what we've got here. We're very blessed. And, I'm looking forward to getting back to normal-ish and really celebrating our community as we should. And thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful week.
This week coming up, we have Yom Yerushalayim. We have a very special interview with Rabbi Friedman and the Ambassador Regev on Thursday in honor of Yom Yerushalayim. And we will also we will end this week's episode with our very own choir. You talk about the great people of Norrice Lee. I mean, this is a choir that came together for Yom HaAtzmaut, all from their own homes, that we will share once again here on Norrice Lee TV for Yom Yerushalayim.
So thank you for joining and wish you all well.
thank Hashem who has given us a state of Israel. Medinat Israel represents more than just a homeland for the Jewish people. It is a symbol of Hashem's salvation. It is proof that He performs miracles. We pray that He redeem us from our present suffering in the blink of an eye. Amen.
Tifate